South Korea is one of the wealthiest, most technologically advanced nations on Earth. But beneath that prosperity sits a number that keeps economists awake at night. Korean household debt has reached roughly 100% of gross domestic product, meaning ordinary families collectively owe as much as the entire economy produces in a year. No other major developed nation carries that ratio. The question is not simply how it got there. The question is what happens when the bill finally comes due. According to the Bank of Korea, household credits surpassed 1,800 trillion Korean won by the end of 2023. The OECD consistently ranks Korea among the top 3 member nations for household debt relative to disposable income, a ratio that has exceeded 200% in recent years. The International Monetary Fund flagged Korean household leverage as a macro-financial vulnerability in its 2023 Article 4 consultation. Mortgage loans account for roughly 60% of total household borrowing, according to the Financial Supervisory Service. And the Bank for International Settlements noted that Korea's household debt to GDP ratio is among the highest of any economy it tracks, sitting above the United States, Germany, and Japan. 3 forces converged over 2 decades to build this mountain of debt. First, housing. Seoul's apartment prices roughly tripled between 2010 and 2022, according to the KB Real Estate Price Index, pushing buyers to borrow far beyond traditional limits just to enter the market. Second, a cultural mechanism called jeonse, a uniquely Korean rental system where tenants pay a large lump sum deposit instead of monthly rent. When prices rose, jeonse deposits ballooned, and many tenants took out loans to fund those deposits, adding a second layer of debt to the system. Third, and critically, the Bank of Korea held interest rates at historically low levels through most of the 2010s, making borrowing feel almost costless. Those 3 forces, surging prices, a deposit-driven rental culture, and cheap credit, did not push Koreans into debt. They made debt feel like the only rational choice. In 2022, the Bank of Korea began one of the most aggressive rate hiking cycles in its modern history, raising the base rate from 0.5% to 3.5% within roughly 18 months. For millions of households with variable rate mortgages, monthly repayments surged almost overnight. Statistics Korea data showed household savings rates falling sharply as income was redirected toward debt service. Consumer spending contracted, dragging on economic growth. Meanwhile, the jeonse market fractured. Some landlords who had invested tenant deposits in rising assets could no longer return those deposits when prices fell, triggering a wave of disputes and legal cases that the Korean government called a jeonse fraud crisis. The debt that once felt like an investment had quietly become a liability distributed across an entire generation. Korea's debt story is not simply a Korean story. It is the story of what happens when cheap money meets constrained housing supply and a culture that equates property with security. The same ingredients have appeared in Australia, Canada, Sweden, and the Netherlands, all countries where household debt ratios have climbed toward or past 100% of GDP. The lesson is structural. When a society prices its housing beyond organic reach and then offers cheap credit as the bridge, it is not solving an affordability problem. It is deferring it with compounding interest. Korea arrived at this reckoning faster than most because its demographics, its geography, and its apartment culture concentrated the pressure. Other nations are walking the same road, just at a different pace.